I want a sports car. No, I want an SUV. No, I want a sports car.
Darling, it's okay. I just bought a car for you to finally stop your nightmares.
Really? Thank you so much, honey, for the Porsche Cayenne Turbo in this updated version here, the new Cayenne facelift. We're going to tell you all about it, and will this one here solve this riddle between sports car and SUV? We're going to find out with Thomas and Autogefühl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go here with the front. The Turbo has a special, unique opening here in the lower part, even more massive. Carrara white is our exterior color, and you start with new headlamps. LED is of course already based, and then these ones here are the HD matrix lights, so they have even more high beam performance and even can project some things on the ground in the front. And overall, this is an extended facelift indeed, because in all versions they really changed the hardware. For example, also the hood here has now a different form, so not much stayed the same, both exterior and interior, and we will give you an extended tour and drive that thing. 493 or 194 inches is the length here for the, whoa, yes, a little bit uneven here in the ground. No problem for this off-road vehicle, but sports car, SUV, it's everything basically. Here now in the facelift, both the base PASM and the optional air suspension now work with a 2-valve system that has been reworked. In both cases, less tilting. Here the Cayenne Turbo comes with the air suspension as standard. 20-inch wheels are based on, these are the 22-inch wheels, so the biggest ones available. And here in the Turbo version, you also have the painted wheel arches, otherwise they would have this contrast. And technology-wise, you also get the rear axis steering, turns the rear wheels in the opposite direction, the front wheels up to 3 degrees. In the rear, SUV and Coupé look kinda alike now, because here, even in the SUV, the typical body style, the number plate moved to the lower part of the vehicle. Here we have then the sporty accentuations in the lower part, Cayenne Turbo badge, really prominent, and 3-dimensional Porsche lettering with the light strip going all the way across. Then, usually with the Cayenne Turbo, you would have this more square exhaust. We can see it here also in our shots, and this one is the optional sports exhaust, and in black with round tips. In German it would be, by the way, Sportabgasanlage. Listen and repeat, Sportabgasanlage. And the Porsche guys often say, to make it a little bit sportier, oh, this one has the Sportaga, like short for Abgasanlage. Turning indicators in the front, here this lower dual blade. Turning indicators in the rear. Really fancy because they enclose the red light. The key fob, always nice with this 911 silhouette. Then door closing sound, really solid, but you can also get the optional soft close if you like. And then inside of the doors, really wrapped tightly everything. Here you have an optional neodyme accentuations. You can also maybe call it gold, but they call it neodyme. Then in the lower part, also this is not just plain hard plastic, it's some kind of coating on it as well. Then the sporty interior. Here you can also optionally get some carbon fiber and once again these neodyme accentuations. But if this green note on the animal skin seats here is something suitable, I think that can be left up for discussion. The problem of the seats is it's a little bit stiff, you know, so the whole seating comfort, the position itself is cool. Command driving position, upright, good view and so on. But it's just too stiff as for the bolsterings, so then is a compromise as for the comfort. If you have the chance to take the race tech seats, the microfiber, or maybe in the combination with the Coupé and the sports lightweight package, these retro seats with the fabric, it is softer actual seating, more comfortable, but here they do have a problem. They need more alternatives, definitely. As for headroom, with 189 or 602, a lot of headroom left, so that's cool. And here we also have this optional Alcantara headliner. So if you forgot to shave, you can just use the shifting lever, drive, reverse, or in here for parking. In the cockpit, you get now more sports car experience as well. 911 steering wheel, cockpit with the instruments and the displays from the Porsche Taycan. 12.6-inch digital instruments, 12.3-inch infotainment and 10.9-inch passenger display, which I can't see from here, but then the passenger can see it from here. And I really love that I can change the driving modes here directly to steering wheel, easily possible while driving. And here also at the steering wheel, I still have real buttons and they also have nice clicking sounds. The only confusing thing is that the volume is on the left, and on the right side you control the digital instruments. I think it would have been more logic when I control the digital instrument on the left side and the volume is on the right side. Or what's your take on that? Might be different than in the right-hand driving version, right? Of course, you can also get a head-up display. We still have something analog here. Of course, the characteristic clock. Infotainment system. Here you can see when I'm switching the driving modes how the other things also changed. Here, for example, in sport mode, then the sports exhaust system also goes on. You can always also individually do that. Or here then in the sports plus mode. The infotainment system itself, you can see in the car internal GPS. It's, let's say, decently quick, so not the most modern one, but also not bad at all. And you also have a nice integration here for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, available wired or wireless. In the middle console, I love this metal knurling and also the clicking sound. However, a lot of high gloss black piano lacquer. Here also the heated seats, they leave fingerprints and so on. When you slide this one open, USB-C charging, but also inductive charging pad. It's cooled as well. And then we have these adaptive cup holders. They hold the bottles tight. And then here we have a lot of space underneath, under the armrest. However, here with the armrest, you have a problem in the EU version. In the US version, this is properly fixed and you need to release it. Here, it's just, somewhat fixed, but not actively. So when you're braking, you have pressure with your elbow on that armrest, then it slides forward automatically, especially when you have two elbows on here, when you're now driving with the passenger. So it's a little bit fixer than it was before in our very first ride with the facelift here, but I don't know. And it was the same thing before actually. And here, when you have bottles in here, this happens. In this case, it's not a problem, but imagine the bottle is open, or even worse, there's an open coffee cup or something. Yeah, then that might really be a problem when that slides forward while braking and then you have coffee all over your vehicle. Enough space on the rear seats definitely here, even when a tall driver is driving. And also as for the headroom, the Coupé, by the way, would have headroom like this. I can put a hand over my head, but that's it. So here in the SUV version, you're of course still more flexible. You can fold the back part of the seat a little bit more upright or a little bit more backward. That is done here with the lever underneath. Right here, pulling this lever, and then you can actually change it. And this is also the only solution that you can actually fold the seat then for the trunk itself. It doesn't work from the trunk in the back. Interesting here that we still have a climate console here with nice metal knurling knobs and clicking sound in the rear. And what's now very strange here in the rear of the facelift, these floor mats, they are not fixed in any way in the rear. So very often when you get in or out of the vehicle, just something like this happens here. So let me tell you a little story of how that happened. So I thought that's just cost savings, and I still think so. Porsche says that at the Porsche dealers, customers were coming and showing like, hey, I wanted to take out the rear floor mats for cleaning, and then I ripped off the whole thing, including the floor underneath. Because, they had these fixations like in the front, and some people might have overreacted and pulled it like, sideways and then ripped everything apart. And then they said, yeah, it's better to have them loose in there. Then we came up with our video, and now I heard from background talks that they might going to change it again. Electric hatch, and here the true SUV form of course has an advantage because it's just a little bit higher in this part. Then you have the manual cover here and a good meter of 40 inches in width. The same goes also meter of 40 inches almost in length. You can see here you can easily store a lot of luggage, and the plug-in hybrid versions you can see here they are a little bit higher, so you lose some height, but then underneath you still have some space, for example for a charging cable. And to fold the seats, as I said, you can do nothing from here actually. You really have to go around and then fold it from the rear compartment, or just this one here, the middle part, you can fold from here. This is here the most powerful Porsche Cayenne, 740 horsepower, so one of two pinnacle versions. Here the Cayenne Turbo e-hybrid, because it's always a plug-in hybrid combination, 4-liter V8 bi-turbo with 740 horsepower, the total system output, rear-wheel biased all-wheel drive and 3.7 seconds in the acceleration figure. For the European market, this one is the pinnacle. On the US market or Northern American market, you can still get the Turbo GT for the Coupé. That one then with the pure 4-liter V8 bi-turbo, and that one then has 3.3 seconds in the acceleration, so even quicker. Other versions would have the 3-liter V6 as the base version, or the Cayenne S, also now with the 4-liter V8, but not as much horsepower. And the plug-in hybrids, either this one here or two other versions based on the 3-liter V6. Both have in common 26 kWh battery now, so higher electric range, realistic 60-70 kilometers or 40-50 miles. And hybrid specific, you can now charge with 11 kilowatt AC. Doesn't sound much, but it was less before. Plop, that's 100. Woo! Think that solves my nightmares. Yeah, feels like a sports car in the acceleration at least. I need more AC. Yeah, whoa. But it's always kind of weird because you sit so high and you do have that SUV feeling, and at the same time you have this extreme acceleration. You also heard our luggage flying in the trunk to the back part, and I even secured it before, you know, but there's so much G-force then being applied. And here, of course, even more interesting in the Sports Plus mode, that air suspension goes a little bit stiffer, and we have the sports exhaust giving us some feedback from that V8. You want to take your clothes off? Or? I mean, like, not everything, you know. So here in the corner, in the slow speeds, the rear axis steering, which is optional, also helps me. That makes the car even more agile, steering in the opposite direction than the front wheels. And you see here, we already caught the next car in front of us. Wow. Also in the corners, I mean, everything stays upright. It doesn't lean to the sides at all. So you don't have the feeling that you would have the disadvantages of a high seating SUV and it would, you know, apply too much G-force to you. It feels overall lighter than it actually is. And also when I'm going some left and right in slalom here, it's such a crisp feeling actually. Here steering commands, very slight degree angles directly transported to the road. I have a direct feeling of what the car is doing, what I'm doing, and what is happening on the road. That is one-to-one, a very direct and crisp experience. That's what I really love about this vehicle. And of course this V8, it gives you definitely more than just an electric vehicle, because you have this slight delay. Electric is always, you know, you have this instant torque there. Here, of course, you have the combination of both, therefore the system output of 740 horsepower. And that is something special, yes, and it delivers you more power. At the same time, they manage it here that it doesn't feel too artificial, you know. So sometimes we had hybrids which felt very artificial. And for example, recently in the S63, you know, that 8-cylinder Mercedes hybrid concept, there the case was rather that you felt more electric boost. And here it's not that much, you know. So you more feel actually the engine than the electric boost. You still have the electric boost, but it doesn't cover things up, you know what I mean? So, and I think that's actually a good thing. Still, of course, if you're pure petrol, you're always more natural in feeling the way. But again, I have to say, for a hybrid driving experience, they made it as pure petrol as possible, I would say. And that's, to me, definitely a very cool feeling. Here, once again, some more nice corners. Accelerates out very well. Rear wheel bias of that all-wheel drive. And I can't believe how quickly I can take these corners here, although it's an SUV and it's so much fun to drive. So as for the driving fun, probably one of the best you can have in an SUV. As for the comfort, you have some compromises. First of all, yes, they hold you quite well as for the side bolstering, but the bolstering itself is too stiff. The so-called Einsitzhöhe is not enough, it needs to be softer. If you can get a version with either the Racetrack's microfiber, so they always call it Racetex at Porsche then, or the Sports Lightweight package, which have these retro fabric seats, this would deliver you more comfort because, you know, it's just softer to sit on. So definitely go for that in your market to get more comfort, because I think people who want to buy this vehicle here, they want that sporty experience, but they also don't want any compromise on comfort. Suspension-wise, this is totally fine actually, because it delivers you that sporty experience from suspension. At the same time, the air suspension rules out the bumps and so on. And here we have the biggest 22-inch wheels mounted, and they're perfectly fine, you know. So we also have some uneven parts in the road, and it doesn't get uncomfortable at all. So suspension-wise, I think great job both for being sporty and comfort purposes. At all times, you can here change the driving modes. Go back to here, in this case, normal hybrid driving mode. Then everything is calms down. Maybe the engine even shuts off directly and you're driving all electric. And in city traffic or something, this can actually be a pleasant experience when you're really silent. You have no local emissions then in the city. That's also an advantage. So that's actually pretty cool then. But at the same time, if you want a sporty experience, go to Sports or Sports Plus. Their electronic helper systems are drawn back then, and you directly have the full power available, and you can get this crisper sound. Also, this extra exhaust note is being released, and wow, this is such a superb experience. About the rear axle steering, by the way, let me demonstrate that to you even in a better way. For example, here I just do a U-turn now, and you see here, for such a large vehicle that goes really quickly, then I can use all of that 3 degrees, so the turning circle is massively reduced. And as I said, at lower speeds, it gives you a sporty experience. But once again, what they managed here, and that is done by a lot of hours and hours of testing and doing setup. Sometimes we have vehicles that feel kind of artificial. As for the rear axle steering, you feel it would be some kind of like artificial fishtailing or something. But that's also not the case here. So they once again found a natural, balanced feeling also for the rear axle steering. And that's actually also very good as for balancing out the whole vehicle. It feels so neutral in the balancing, you know what I mean? So it's one of these large vehicles where you say you can have the full control over the full power of it. Of course, at some point you can't deny the fact it's an SUV and it's heavy, because when you're entering a corner at high speed, at some point physics is just driving you outside the corner, you know. So but for what you can do with a large SUV, this is probably one of the pinnacles. It might be different when they then at some point come up with the full electric version of the Cayenne. Of course, we'll keep you all updated with these developments here also on our channel. And hybrid specific, you start here in the e-power mode. That means you drive all electric, it's all silent. You just have this, certain sound that needs to be played also for pedestrians outside, and you can also, when the battery is full, drive significant of time all electric. As I said, it's probably some 60, 70 kilometers or 40, 50 miles depending on how you drive and how the topography is and so on and so on. And if you pin it down, then the combustion engine is always active. Or if you switch to the driving modes, for example, you can also switch to the hybrid mode. This would actually make sense, for example, that you drive motorway, then on a petrol engine, and maybe inside the city, then all electric, and the car switches back and forth. But if I go here to the sport mode already, then you can see also here the RPM meter gets active, then always the combustion engine is being activated. Sport Plus, of course, the same. And you also have an off-road mode, or a gravel off-road mode. Then the air suspension is going higher. so you have even more ground clearance. And in this case also the combustion engine is being activated to give you maybe some power when you have wheel spin or something like that. So very versatile indeed. Also as for the powertrain, even though there are hybrids out there that have a higher pure electric range nowadays, at least they increased that here significantly for this new facelifted version. Driving with the off-road mode, by the way, is also fun because you feel the car is a little bit more higher. It's not more comfortable or something, rather the opposite, because you lose, of course, some travel then in the other way from the suspension. And if you drive way faster, then at some point the car also lowers itself automatically again. So is my nightmare over now? Well, for Leah it has just begun, because she could hardly keep her breakfast after these curves here. This is the side effect then of this SUV, especially of the passenger. You can't deny it can never be a sports car. For an SUV, this is super impressive, and wow, what have they managed to put there on the road? So sporty, so much fun, but a true sports car will always be better. You just have the lower center of gravity, and you do always feel that, especially then for the passenger. The facelift in general added a lot of nice features, exterior and interior. Some things still need to be improved. We also took you on a tour of that. And if you want to see more of the Porsche Cayenne in the updated version, maybe with the base Cayenne that is a little bit more affordable, you can check it out here, or racing the Turbo GT pre-facelift version, but you should check out this racetrack episode.